The maximum failure to file penalty is going to be 25% of the tax owed. So we're looking at an underpayment penalty because you didn't get your taxes paid throughout the year. We're looking at a failure to pay penalty on top of that. And then we're getting smacked upside the head with a failure to file penalty. So again, even if you mentally cannot get the tax return out just because, the whole idea of owing the IRS is weighing you down, at the very least, for right now, let's take an action step and get the extension filed.
Welcome to the Tax Relief with Timalyn Bowens podcast. Are you behind on taxes? Is the IRS threatening you or your business? Are you overwhelmed and confused about how to resolve your tax issues? Let's join Timalyn as she explains your options and how she may be able to help. Timalyn Bowens is America's favorite EA.
Hey, family. I am excited to be back in the podcast studio. And truth be told, I'm always excited to shoot these. But today I'm excited because we're halfway through tax season and I'm a little tired. So next week we have the March 15th deadline. So that is for our S corporations and partnerships. But with it being in March, I am seeing a lot of the same question online. And that question is, do I need to file a tax extension? Now, if you're just now getting your stuff together, the blanket answer from a tax professional is probably going to be yes. However, for me to accurately answer that question for you or give you a good idea, we have to look at a few things. So in today's episode, we're going to look at what a tax extension is, what a tax extension is not, because we definitely need to know the difference when taking these things into consideration, and then why you may want to file a tax extension for this year. So you may be thinking, it's March, tax deadline's not until April 18th this year, and yes, it is April 18th because the 15th falls on a weekend, 17th is a DC holiday. So you have more than enough time, right? A little bit over a month. However, whenever you rush doing anything with the numbers, mistakes are bound to happen. So why rush on something as important as your tax return if you do not have to? Because remember, when it comes to the IRS and mistakes, there are usually penalties that accompany those mistakes. I've seen taxpayers leave off Form 1099s, which are income. And if you underreport your income within a certain amount, the tax penalty with that is nasty. And we all know that the whole purpose of this podcast is to help you avoid becoming my client. So I'm going to give you those nuggets to make sure that you stay out of tax trouble. Now, if you're new to the podcast, pro tip. You know how they say the devil is in the detail? Well, check this out. The nuggets are in the notes. So if there's anything that you're like, oh yeah, that was really good, I don't know how to find it, make sure you check out the show notes. There are hyperlinks to different resources that I'm going to mention in the podcast, not only in this episode, but in previous episodes as well. Now, I feel like a preacher because I feel like my time is almost up and I'm going to say, let's get right into it, but let's go ahead and get right into it. So what is a tax extension? A tax extension is a request for more time to get your tax return filed. Please note, to get it filed, not to pay. For individuals, and this includes sole proprietors, so if you file a Schedule C to show your business income and expenses, that includes you. You are going to file your extension with Form 4868. If you are listening to this and you have an S Corp or partnership, shame on you. Just kidding. You're in the right place, but you need to make sure that you get your form 7004 or 7004 filed by next week. Now, with this request, you automatically get the 6 months. Okay. So this year that pushes individuals out to October, and for S Corps and partnerships, that's going to push you out to September. There are 3 different ways that you can request this. You can fill out the form and mail it. So if you were to go Google the 4868 or the 7004, within the instructions, it will tell you where to mail it. Now, this is something that trips people up. They're like, I want an extension, but I don't know what to put as to why I want the extension. Well, guess what? For the 4868, you don't even have to worry about that. You're going to put your tax information, your updated address. So sometimes I have people that get confused and they say, well, I lived at this place in 2022, but now I live here. You want to make sure that you put the address that you live at right now, because why in the world would you want the IRS to send you mail to your old address, right? And we all know how shaky the post office system is right now. No offense to my USPS workers, but it's a little scary right now. So make sure you have your current address on there. The next thing is you're going to want to estimate your tax liability. Now, you may be thinking, what in the world? I am not a tax pro. That's why I use a tax professional. If you have asked your tax professional to file an extension, they will do that for you, but they are going to need the tax documents that you already have in order to do that accurately. The next part, you are going to want to figure out your estimated tax payments. Now, if you are self-employed and you're making your quarterly estimated tax payments like you should, so you don't owe, you can pull that information right from your IRS account if you're doing it online, or you can look and see the total payments with your canceled checks. If you are retired and you are getting your pension payments, you can look at that information to see what was withheld. And the same thing if you are a W-2 employee, you can check out your check stubs to see how much you've had withheld for the year. The next option after mailing, you can e-file it through the IRS system. Now, either you can do that DIY through a TurboTax or hnrblock.com, or if you use a tax professional, they can also do that for you. Now, you may be wondering, because we go over almost every episode, can I just do the extension myself? Maybe. And I'm sorry, it's not really a black and white thing here. It's a little gray, because I will never, ever, ever be the judge of your tax competency. Okay? So what's easy for me or another tax professional may not be easy for you. What I have seen when we're looking at the estimated liability and the estimated payments, that is often not done accurately when it's done within a DIY situation. Okay? Last but not least, with a way to kind of circumvent filling out paperwork, you can go online and make a payment for your taxes with direct pay, EFTPS system. And what you're going to do, you're going to mark that payment for an extension. Once they collect that payment, the extension is implied and you have that extra 6 months. Okay? Now, it's a little bit different. You may be holding on to your chair like, okay, Timalyn, what are the instructions for the S Corp and partnership? With the 7004, it's a little bit different. You don't have to figure out as much stuff, but you do have to actually mark a reason on there. And you want to make sure that you get this out by March 15th. Your extension is only valid if it's requested by the original tax due date. Okay, so make sure that you get it out by that day. If you are curious about what a completed 4868 actually looks like, I just did a video this week on my YouTube channel, which you can look it up under Timalyn Bowens EA, or you can do the @America's Fave EA to get to that channel. And like I said, I just did it, and it is how to file a tax extension for this tax year. Okay? So now that we know what the extension is, it is that request for more time, the automatic 6 months to get the return filed. You don't have to wait 6 months to file it. As a matter of fact, if you get all of your documents well within or before the 6 months, I advise you go ahead and file it before that, because an extension is only a request to file later, not to pay later. A lot of people get confused by that. So let's say that you actually owe taxes. Even though you filed an extension, you will get hit with the failure to pay penalty. Yes, the IRS is going to tack on a penalty for you not paying your taxes on time. That penalty is 0.5%, so 0.5% for each month that you do not pay. This penalty is going to keep building up until you get the balance for the tax year paid. We want to make sure that we can avoid this at all costs. So again, referring back to the YouTube page, I've gone through and showed you how to figure out your estimated tax payments. We've also talked about quarterly estimated tax payments right here on the Tax Relief with Timalyn Bowens podcast. You want to make sure that you have it figured out how much money you need to pay throughout the year so you can avoid something like the failure to pay penalty. So you may be thinking, if I'm going to get hit with a penalty anyway, why should I file an extension? Well, if you owe and you don't have anything figured out with how you're going to pay that, you definitely need to file an extension or the tax return, but maybe the extension to give you more of a breather, because check this out. If you get your return prepared, you know that you owe, you don't have the money, please don't stick your head in the sand. I say all the time, the pray and wait method does not work. If you do not file the extension by the deadline, you automatically get into failure to file penalties. So as soon as April 19th hits, if you did not file your return, you did not file an extension, you are going to get hit with a penalty of 5% a month. And let me go back. When I'm mentioning these percentages, it's a percentage of the tax owed. So to keep numbers very, very easy, let's say that you owe $1,000, right? If you owe $1,000, you are going to get hit with 5% of that for the first month that you did not file the tax return, or in this case, file the extension to cover you so you have more time to file the tax return. The maximum failure to file penalty is going to be 25% of the tax owed. So we're looking at an underpayment penalty because you didn't get your taxes paid throughout the year. We're looking at a failure to pay penalty on top of that. And then we're getting smacked upside the head with a failure to file penalty. So again, even if you mentally cannot get the tax return out just because, you know, the whole idea of owing the IRS is weighing you down, at the very least, for right now, let's take an action step and get the extension filed. Okay? Now, hopefully you're listening to this and you don't owe back taxes. You just wanted to know how to file an extension so you can stay out of trouble. I need you to do me a favor. I just did you a solid, right? And told you why you need to get this extension filed. There are 1 in 50 taxpayers that have an issue with the IRS. Now, if they already owe back taxes, this will just be a Band-Aid to kind of stop the bleeding so it doesn't get any worse. But will you do me a favor and share this podcast episode with family members and friends? Because, you know, people don't just go out on Facebook and LinkedIn and say, hey, I have a tax situation and it's bleeding my bank account. But if you share this on your social media platforms with your contacts in your phone, you never know who you may be helping, right? So if that is you and you are the person who's kind of stuck right now, even if you don't work with me, if you take nothing else from this podcast episode, I want to make sure that you know that you need to do what you need to do. Find somebody that you connect with and get the help you need, because back taxes shouldn't ruin your life. So 2 quick things before I leave. I just want to give you a reminder that in this episode, we're looking at everything through a federal tax lens. Because remember, I'm an enrolled agent, so I'm licensed through the Internal Revenue Service to represent you with them. I can represent you with states. However, that's usually not what I focus on here, just to help you be able to keep track of everything, because states get to choose how they do things. Your state may also require that you file a separate tax extension with them. For some states, the federal is good. For others, it is not. So make sure that you check with your state's Department of Revenue to make sure that you don't need to also file an extension with them. Number 2, you as a listener make this podcast what it is. On whatever podcast platform you're streaming this on, would you please do me a favor and leave a review? You can leave me some stars or comment on what your favorite part of Tax Relief with Timalyn Bowens is. Maybe it was this episode. Maybe you learned something in the previous episode. I look forward to seeing your feedback. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to listen today. I'd like to thank Jim Ray Consulting Services for helping me get this message out to you. I hope you found the information helpful. Did you know 1 in 50 people have a tax problem? Please share this episode with your friends and family, because you never know who may need help. Again, thanks for listening. Hey, just as a reminder, this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. It provides a framework and possible solutions for solving your tax problems, but it is not legally binding. Please consult your tax professional regarding your specific tax situation.